After you finish Elden Ring Nightreign, you have questions. How did the night come to the lands between? Who is the Nightlord? And what happened in each of the endings? In today's video, I will answer all of those questions, starting with the identity of Heolstor, the Nightlord. The Night of the Lord relic description reads as follows. The country lay in ruin. The man who once was knight had challenged the hero, but he too was no match. He fell, just another body in a great pile, but eventually he awoke, crawling from underneath the others. Though he had failed to protect anything or anyone, he yet lived. And so he cursed the world. It was the dead of night, and from the sky bowered down a great rain. At first glance, this doesn't make any sense, and this is true, because in order to understand it fully, you need to consider not only Elden Ring, but also Dark Souls. Let's start explaining it bit by bit. The country lay in ruin. This refers to the lands between post the Shattering. We already know that Nightreign shares the same lore up to the Shattering. Then something happened that altered this timeline post the Shattering. The man who once was knight had challenged the hero, but he too was no match. The hero here is a keyword, and it refers to Radagon. The talisman Radagon's icon reads as follows. As the husband of Rennala, the red-haired Radagon studied sorcery, and as the husband of Queen Marika, he studied incantations. Thus did the hero aspire to be complete. And the helm of Radahn reads, Helm of the Golden Lion was flowing red hair, worn by General Radahn. Radahn inherited the furious, flaming red hair of his father Radagon and is fond of its heroic implications. And the Turtle Pope says the following. Lord Radagon was a great champion, possessed of flowing red looks. He came to these lands at the head of a great golden host when he met Lady Rennala in battle. And many more items mention Radagon as a hero, a champion with heroic deeds. So the hero in the description of the Night of the Lord is Radagon. Now who challenged Radagon after the Shattering? We have only one candidate. Yes, the Tarnished, us. This becomes really obvious when you read the following lines. But eventually he awoke, crawling out from underneath the others. Though he had failed to protect anything or anyone, yet he lived. And so he cursed the world.
Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all.
The yet he lived part is a dead giveaway, because the tarnished can die. When they die, grace would simply resurrect them. And this is exactly where the timeline diverges from the original Elden Ring timeline to the Nightreign timeline. In our timeline, the Tarnished, our playable character, was strong enough to defeat Radagon, while in the Nightreign timeline, no Tarnished was strong enough to defeat him, turning the entire plan of Marika into a Sisyphean ordeal, an endless cycle of struggle and sacrifice with no true resolution. Without a Tarnished strong enough to challenge Radagon, the plan collapses into repetition, endlessly pushing toward a goal that can no longer be reached. This caused so much suffering to the Tarnished, so much despair, and this despair translated into the birth of the Nightlord as we know him, a destructive force that wants to erase everything. Now I want to make another claim, and I will prove it in a moment. Heolstor was originally just one knight who attempted to defeat Radagon, but when he rose from that pile of dead bodies, he wasn't just one person anymore. He became an amalgamation of all the Tarnished who attempted to face Radagon and failed. This isn't the first time that FromSoft used this plot. In matter of fact, it was used before in Dark Souls 3. The story of the Dark Souls trilogy is vast and complex, but if you haven't played it or don't know the lore, I will do my best to explain the important stuff throughout the video. In the beginning, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog, a land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity, heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. This was called the first flame, and it brought the age of fire, or the age of gods. But the flame wouldn't last forever. It was destined to fade away in time, and thus beginning the age of dark. Now, a certain character that we will talk about later on didn't want this to happen, so he sacrificed himself to the flame in order to unnaturally prolong its life. And he instructed his children to shepherd humanity into doing the same. In every single installment of the Dark Souls series, you are presented with two main options at the end: to link the flame and extend the Age of Fire, or to extinguish it and begin the Age of Dark. During the period between Dark Souls 2 and 3, many undead attempted to link the flame. They were strong enough to reach the kiln of the first flame, but they weren't strong enough to actually link the flame. And so they were turned into ash by the flame and became the unkindled. We can see the common theme between this story and the description of the Night of the Lord. Heroes rose to uphold a task given to them by the gods. They were strong enough to reach their destination, but they weren't strong enough to finish the job. In Dark Souls, they couldn't link the first flame, and in Elden Ring Nightreign, they couldn't defeat Radagon, forming a pile of ash in Dark Souls and a pile of dead bodies in Nightreign. From that pile of ash in Dark Souls rose the Ashen One, the protagonist of Dark Souls 3. The Ashen One, you can choose in the end to link the flame or begin an Age of Dark. And just like the Ashen One rose from that pile of ash, Heolstor, the Nightlord, rose from the pile of dead bodies, and he chose to curse the world. He chose to bring about the destructive form of the night. And yes, I believe that the night in itself isn't that destructive. This was just the version that Heolstor brought, born from his despair and from his grief. The night itself is a natural phenomenon. It's a cycle like any cycle, but we will come to that later. A fun side note here is that the unkindled are known to be countless and nameless. Now, Heolstor's name in the original Japanese is actually the nameless Nightlord. Just some food for thoughts. Now, having established the common theme between Dark Souls and Nightreign, we need to look at another creature that merged with the Nightlord, the child of the Recluse. The story of the Recluse is a very intriguing one. We were told that she gave birth to an infant that she lost and was now trying to find. So, how exactly do you lose an infant? Well, the infant wasn't just a normal baby, it was something else. A creature born from a ritual involving an outer god. How did this happen and why isn't really important to the topic of this video. I will make a dedicated video talking about the recluse and the infant, so be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss it. The important thing to know is the nature of the infant. He was more of a god than a normal human. A creature with insatiable hunger that would devour anything in his way, earning it the name, the Gnawling. The infant was left in the care of the Witch of the Wheel, a friend of the recluse. During the infant's time with the Witch of the Wheel, a great clash of armies happened, and the infant overran the armies and devoured their shadows. Then it lost itself and turned on the Witch of the Wheel. After that, the infant disappeared. But the 5th entry of the recluse's journal talks about its destination. The infant had an audience with the Nightlord himself. The recluse explained, saying that the shadow of the Nightlord must have attracted the infant. But then, something happened. Instead of devouring the shadow of the Nightlord, it seems they struck a deal. the Nightlord would absorb the infant into himself, and the infant would become an aspect of the Nightlord. This would benefit both of them. The Nightlord would gain even more power, even more hunger, and he will continue devouring the entire lands between, while the infant would go on to satisfy his insatiable hunger. Now this is really clear when we look at the recluse's ending. After defeating the Nightlord, we find the infant in a bed in the shrouded round table. He got separated from the Nightlord and didn't perish with him. This is a testament to the Nightlord's ability to absorb other beings into himself. Remember when I said that the Nightlord isn't just a single person? Rather, he is the amalgamation of all the Tarnished who attempted to defeat Radagon. The story of the infant is one of my evidence, but it's not the only one. Of course, you saw how Heolstor is able to tear a hole through the sky. It's pure cinema. But did you know that he can perform 7 variations of this move? Each one of those variations imbue the Nightlord with a different power. Now the interesting part is that each power corresponds to a different Nightlord, hence 7 variations. He can use Frost like Caligo, Madness like Libra, Holy like the Dark Drift Knight, and so on and so forth. So it seems just like he absorbed the infant, he also absorbed the 7 Nightlords after their defeat. Now for the final clue, Heolstor uses a variation of the Moonlight Greatsword. This caused a lot of confusion in the community, making some people believe that the Nightlord was a carrion, which is totally wrong, and I will explain why in a moment. Now I have 2 theories in why Heolstor wielded those weapons. First, the weapons he wielded belonged to the different Tarnished that fought Radagon. That's why he wields a very wide range of weapons. The Moonlight Greatsword, a normal sword, and a dagger. It's similar in concept to the final boss of Dark Souls 3. It's also worth noting that this version of the Moonlight Greatsword is very different from the Dark Moon Greatsword that we get from Ranni. If anything, the pattern on Heolstor's blade reminds me of Lodwig's Moonlight Holy Blade more than any other variation. Second theory is that those weapons aren't his. They belong to a band of heroes that tried to defeat him in the past. In an amazing video by Bonfire VN, we can take a closer look at the shape of the knight. In that video, we can see clearly how his extra arm is tied around his neck and impaled by the Moonlight Greatsword, and his primary right arm is impaled by the dagger. Those weapons are clearly restraining him. Now looking at the golden pattern on his rags, they look very similar to the Cipher Bata, which is the language of light, the language of the 2 fingers. It seems this band of heroes tried to confine the shape of the knight with the assistance of the 2 fingers, but they ultimately failed at killing him once and for all. Now why is Heolstor being a carrion theory is wrong? This theory assumes that country lays in ruin refers to the Liurnian Wars, the hero refers to Radagon, and the knight is a carrion knight. First, we know that Nightreign shares the same events with Elden Ring up till the Shattering, and we know that the Liurnian Wars ended in a stalemate. The Carrion Knights were formidable and stood their ground against the Golden Order, so how can the pile of dead bodies refer to them? Second, there is a huge time gap between the Liurnian Wars and the Shattering. We know that a timeline only diverged post the Shattering Wars. Now, I will briefly recap the events that happened between the Liurnian Wars and the Shattering. The war ended in Radagon marrying Rennala, and they had children together. Rennala gave birth to Ranni, Rykard, and Radahn. They raised them. Then after an amount of time, Marika banished Godfrey. Then Radagon left his family and headed to Leyndell to become Marika's king consort. He became the 2nd Elden Lord and he had children with Marika. And yes, Marika is Radagon, so he kind of had children with himself. Anyways, they gave birth to Miquella and Milenia. Then they raised them and a certain amount of time passed. After that, Ranni started plotting against Marika and the Greater Will. the Night of the Black Knives happened and Godwyn the Golden was murdered. This was said to be the catalyst to the shattering. After falling into despair due to Godwyn's death, Marika shattered the Elden Ring. Then the Shattering War happened. We know for a fact that those events are shared by the two games. So yeah, this theory cannot be true. Now, after explaining the origins and being of Heolstor, I want to talk about the night itself as a natural phenomenon. That's what Iron Eye calls it, and by doing so, we can explain the first sin and the dawn ending. But in order to do so, we need to return once more to Dark Souls. As we said, in Dark Souls, there are two main endings shared by all the installments, the Age of Fire and the Age of Dark. Now, what is the Age of Fire? The Age of Fire is the era we find ourselves in during the events of Dark Souls. It's a period dominated by the Lords. It's also called the Age of the Gods. However, this golden age can only continue so long as fire at the source of the gods' power remains strong. But eventually, fire will fade and only darkness will remain, thus beginning the Age of Dark, or the Age of Man. After that, fire will reignite once more, starting another Age of Fire. This cycle is described by Keith, the primordial serpent, as the logic of the world. It's the natural order of things. But Gwyn, the Lord of Cinder, feared the dark and didn't want the Age of Fire to end. So as the first flame began to fade, he made a drastic decision. Gwyn would sacrifice himself to link the dying flame and prolong its life, thus unnaturally prolonging the Age of Fire, which had catastrophic consequences. This is known as the first sin. Gwyn also tasked his children with shepherding humans into following his example, linking the flame generation after generation to uphold his Age of Fire. As we said, this is called the first sin. Now, going back to Elden Ring, we know that Marika did something similar. Her age should have ended a long time ago, but she sealed destined death and introduced a new cycle of death and rebirth through the Erdtree, thus unnaturally prolonging her age, which resulted in the broken state we find the lands between in. It resulted in a stagnant world. The primordial Nightlord's rune reads as follows: a thing with the properties of a great rune, harbored by the primordial Nightlord. The cutting gifted tribe anticipated the coming night and spent many a moon planning its prevention, concluding that their only chance at success was to cheat a god. They had glimpsed what they should not, the very sin of the Erdtree. For their trespass, so were they punished. To me, this description implies that the coming of Heolstor as we know him is tied to the sin of the Erdtree. The sin of the Erdtree is mentioned again in the crypt below the Shrouded Round Table, but this time it's called the first sin. To atone for the first sin, we elect to become the foundation. So to stop the Nightlord, the cutting gifted tribe needed to atone for the first sin. If we can learn something from Dark Souls, it would be that prolonging your age unnaturally has catastrophic consequences. I believe this was Marika's first sin as well. By unnaturally prolonging her age, she gave rise to an unnatural Nightlord. A Nightlord with the sole purpose of destroying everything. The whole tarnished blot was made by Marika as a last resort to preserve her age. And as I already said, that's how the Nightlord was born. If Marika allowed her age to pass naturally, the night would have came peacefully, as a natural phenomenon, an age like any age, and in time, it would have went away, exactly like what happened in the Dawn ending. The night isn't destructive by nature. We know from the base game that the Nox wanted to bring about the Nightlord. If the Nightlord nature is that destructive, then why would anybody want that? We ourselves can bring about the night upon the lands between in Ranni's ending. She says the following:
Now cometh the age of the stars. 1,000-year voyage under the wisdom of the moon. Here, beginneth the chill night that encompasses all, reaching the great beyond.
We can see here how the night in itself isn't this destructive force that wants to erase the lands between from existence. That was what Heolstor wanted. It was his influence on the night. The influence that Marika was responsible of by prolonging her age and not allowing the night to come naturally. Now this becomes really obvious when you look at the cycle of day/night and the dawn ending. In the dawn ending, we see the earth tree restored to its former glory. Then a leaf from the earth tree falls on a giant and wakes him up. He takes a final look on the lands between, see the earth tree, and leave. This giant looks exactly like the giants we see during our expedition in Lemveld. The giant also bears a big resemblance to the aspect of night Heolstor first faced. This giant is simply the manifestation of the night itself, the night as a natural phenomenon. During the day in our expedition, those giants are moving slowly. Then as the night approaches, they start moving faster and faster. We are then forced to move to the only place that can protect us from the night, the circle of light made by the illusory minor earth tree. This environmental storytelling shows us the dynamic between the night and the only thing that can banish it, light. But this small earth tree can't banish the night on its own. It simply doesn't produce enough light. And that's exactly what happens in the dawn ending. With the defeat of the Nightlord and the restoration of the earth tree, enough light was generated. When the giant wakes up and sees the light from the earth tree, it leaves the lands between, as the age of night was now over. The word dawn itself is a dead giveaway to this concept. And the giant being some kind of a tree communicates that the night in itself isn't that different from the earth tree or its light. Now, let's talk about Wilder and Iron Eye endings. Starting with Wilder, we see him in the end using a silver tear to take the mantle of the Nightlord, and he just walks away. This can be easily explained using his questline. We know that Wilder is a twin brother of the Duchess. Now the Duchess, being the priestess of the Round Table, binds her to it. If the Round Table perished, the priestess would perish with it. And we know that the shrouded Round Table only purpose is to put an end to the Nightlord. Thus, if the Nightlord was to perish, the Round Table would follow, and so would the priestess. Wilder, being her twin brother, doesn't want her to die, so he comes up with a plan. If he was to take the mantle of the Nightlord, then the Round Table will not perish, and the priestess would live on. Now it isn't really clear if Wilder became the exact copy of the Nightlord or not. We don't know if the Nightreign would continue under the rule of Wilder or not, but in my opinion, Wilder would end the destruction. He is just acting as a placeholder. He is keeping the night at bay. If this is the case, then he saved the world from the night and also saved his sister. And to me, this shows how the version of the night we see in Nightreign is just the version of the night that Heolstor wanted, while other Nightlords can change that vision. It's exactly like how in the ending of Elden Ring, we can choose the kind of order we want to make. We can choose our own age and imprint our vision onto the Elden Ring. Finally, we got the Iron Eye ending. In that ending, Iron Eye refuses to end the night, saying that the night is far from over. But why? Well, in his questline we discover that Iron Eye, as well as the Brotherhood of Assassins he belongs to, are all living in death, and their only purpose is to end the night. If that happens, then the Brotherhood would serve no purpose anymore. They will be disposed of. Thus, the only hope for the Brotherhood is to prolong the night, an endless night, fighting on and on, a night that would never break. If that happens, then the Brotherhood will not be disposed of, and that's what Iron Eye did. He doomed the world to save himself and his Brotherhood. I will cover the entire story of Iron Eye in a dedicated video, so stay tuned. And if you liked this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss the future Nightreign content. Until next video, farewell, Nightfarers.